The heat was suffocating, the kind that made sweat feel like it evaporated before it had a chance to cool you. The midday sun hung like a white-hot coin in the sky, baking the ground and everyone standing on it. At the edge of the forward operating base, just past the last sandbag wall and within view of the distant hills, Sergeant Donnie Ortiz stood with her Barrett M82 resting across the sandbagged barrier. Her stance was calm, her expression unreadable, but every muscle in her body was dialed in, focused on the object moving overhead. A small drone buzzed across the sky, smooth, low, and precise. Not American. Definitely not friendly. It flew in. Lazy circles above the base like a vulture, casing the layout, scouting for weakness. It had been doing that for days, always at the same time, always just beyond the reach of response. The rules of engagement were clear. You don't fire unless it's a direct threat. You don't fire unless you're ordered to. And you sure as hell don't try to take down an aerial vehicle with a sniper rifle. But Downey wasn't thinking about orders right now. She was thinking about trajectory. Behind her, a group of infantrymen stood in the shade of a Humvee, watching her with expressions that ranged from amused to skeptical. What's she doing now? Private Bell asked, squinting through the sunlight. She's aiming that dinosaur of a rifle at a drone again, Corporal Janssen said with a grin. She thinks she's gonna snipe it out of the sky. Bell snorted. Is she serious? She's always serious, another added. That's the problem. Donnie heard them. She always heard them. She didn't react. Instead, she adjusted the rifle's bipod, steadied her breathing, and aligned the crosshairs just ahead of the drone's path. Her fingers turned the scope's dial with practiced precision, compensating for wind direction and the drone's movement. 100 yards up, 20 miles per hour. Westward drag, crosswind, bullet drop. She ran the numbers in her head, faster than most soldiers could type them into a calculator. She thinks she's in a movie, Bell laughed. Some kind of rebel sniper. Someone tell her this isn't a video game, Janssen added, louder this time, hoping she'd hear it. Danny exhaled slowly. She remembered shooting cans off fence posts back home in New Mexico, 1,000 times over. She remembered her father's voice steady and calm as he coached her through long-range shots with rifles too heavy for a kid her size. He used to say, if the math is right, the bullet listens. She closed one eye. The drone was coming. Into range. It wasn't hovering. It was patrolling. Most soldiers ignored it. But Donnie had seen it dip slightly lower each time it passed, like it was calibrating. Watching Dot, she flicked the safety off with a gentle click. The soldiers behind her stopped talking. The sound was unmistakable. Wait, is she really going to? Bell didn't finish the sentence. Danny's breathing slowed. Her fingers slipped to the trigger. Her heart didn't race. It never did. The moment stretched out. Just her, the drone, and the space between. Then she fired. The thunderclap of the Barrett. 50 cal rang out like a hammer strike. The recoil kicked against her shoulder like a steel boot. The echo rolled across the outpost, startling a few birds from their nests in the distant cliffs. She kept her eye in the scope. The drone flinched barely. It rocked slightly mid-flight, as if catching turbulence. But then it corrected and continued on its path, disappearing into the blue. A second passed. Then another. Then the laughter came. It started as a chuckle from Bell and rolled into full belly laughs from the group behind her. You actually shot at it, someone cried. Oh man, Ortiz. You miss by a mile? Trying to win a war with a sniper rifle now? She just wasted a 50 cal round like. It was a spitball. Danny didn't turn around. She picked up the shell casing and placed it gently in her pocket. She re-engaged the safety, packed the rifle, and stood up without a word. Private Bell stepped forward, his smirk wide. "Come on, Sergeant. That thing's still flying. Thought you were the best shot on base?" Danny met his eyes with calm indifference. "I hit it." The smirk propped slightly. "You ... what?" "I hit it," she repeated, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. Bell scoffed. "Sure you did." "I saw it twitch," she added. "It shifted mid-flight." "Must have been the wind," Janssen said, still laughing. "Or maybe your bullet waved as it flew by." Danny walked past them without another word. She didn't expect them to believe her. They never did. But deep in her gut, in that instinct, that every marksman develops over years of repetition, she felt it. That slight shift in the drone's motion, the wobble. It wasn't natural. The shot had connected. Maybe not a critical hit, but a hit nonetheless. And in war, one hit is all it takes to change everything. She headed back toward the barracks, leaving the laughter behind her. Up in the command tent, an operator stared at the radar screen, watching as a single blip wavered, dipped, and then vanished. Long before the sand, the drone, and the laughter, Gani Ortiz grew up in a different kind of desert, the kind where the sun beat down on barbed wire fences and cattle grazed beneath rusting windmills. Home was a forgotten corner of southern New Mexico, where roads were cracked, dreams were small, and nothing ever seemed to change. She was the youngest of three and the only girl. Her brothers were loud, rough, and wild. She was quiet, focused, always watching. Her mother worked double shifts at the diner in town, and her father, Miguel Ortiz, worked the ranch and watched his daughter with silent admiration. Miguel wasn't a man of many words, but what he said stuck. He was a Marine in his younger days. Left the corps after a shrapnel wound changed the shape of his right knee. He walked with a limp, but he carried himself like a man who didn't bow to anything. The first time Danny picked up a rifle, she was 9. It was a .22 small, light, and old, but it felt powerful in her tiny hands. Her dad set up empty beer cans on a rusted fence post. "You breathe," he told her, adjusting her stance. "You squeeze, don't pull. The shot comes when it's ready." She missed 5 times in a row, cried out of frustration. Her father handed her a handkerchief, then sat next to her in the dirt. "You don't shoot with your hands," he said. "You shoot with your mind. The bullet listens to math." The next day, she hit every single Kandat by 12. She was hitting moving targets on horseback. By 16, she was winning small-town shooting competitions without breaking a sweat. Boys twice her size whispered about her behind her back, called her weird, cold, robotic. But Donnie didn't mind. She didn't care about medals. She cared about precision. She studied wind currents and bullet drop instead of prawn dresses. She watched videos of long-range snipers during war. While others were sneaking off to parties, Danny stayed at the ranch after dark, firing at tin targets with glow stick rings duct-taped to them. Her father would sit nearby, sipping coffee, just listening. When it came time to graduate, most kids left for college or nowhere at all. Donnie went to the recruitment office. The Army recruiter had raised an eyebrow. "You're barely 100 pounds. You sure you're not looking for Air Force?" "I'm sure," Donnie had said. Basic training wasn't kind to her. She wasn't built for brute strength. She failed her first ruck march. Her arms shook during obstacle drills, and she passed out on her second day at the range, but not from fear, from heat stroke. Other trainees laughed. Some whispered that she wouldn't last a week, but when rifle qualification came, everything changed. She hit 39 out of 40 targets, some from uncomfortable angles, some in gusting wind. Her instructors couldn't believe it. One even asked if she'd used a cheat. She didn't reply. She just looked downrange, where the last target still swung from the impact of her bullet. Donnie didn't become a sniper. There were politics involved, and she lacked the combat deployment time. But she kept training, volunteered for every marksmanship drill, stayed late at the range, read everything she could on combat ballistics. Some commanders noticed. Others didn't care. Eventually, she was assigned to logistics, where her steady nature helped her organize convoys and supply routes. But the rifle never left her side dot at each base she transferred to. She found the highest spot, mapped every approach route, and learned the terrain like it was a puzzle. She wasn't obsessed. She was prepared. She didn't trust bureaucracy to save lives. She trusted herself, back at the forward operating base. Her reputation was mixed. Some soldiers respected her precision. Others thought she was odd. She rarely joked, rarely joined card games or smoke breaks. But those who saw her shoot never forgot it. There was something eerie in the way she moved, from standing to prone in seconds, from breathing to stillness in a heartbeat, like a switch flipped. Like the air around her stopped moving until she pulled the trigger. One lieutenant once said, "Ortiz isn't just calm under pressure. Pressure gets quiet around her." Still, she wasn't treated like some hero. She was a specialist doing supply checks and inventory management. She cleaned weapons no one else maintained. She volunteered for the boring stuff. She didn't complain. And yet, that drone had haunted her since its first pass. She had watched it circle, the way it angled slightly on approach, how it adjusted its path each time. The others laughed, called it just a camera, said it wasn't a threat. But Danny saw what they didn't, the way its lens locked on certain equipment piles, lingered on vehicle tracks. She knew recon patterns. This wasn't random dot, so when she took that shot, it wasn't for glory. It wasn't for revenge. It was math. It was pattern. It was instinct and training combining in a single moment. The bullet was gone in a breath. The laughter came fast. But deep down, Danny wasn't worried about what they said. She'd done the math, and she knew the bullet had listened. The war had gone quieter in this part of the desert, or so command liked to say. They called this phase of the conflict stabilization, as if the enemy had decided to play fair. But anyone with boots on the ground knew better. There weren't firefights every night anymore, true. But now the enemy watched, waited, tested. The attacks were rarer, but smarter. And it was the quiet days that got people killed. For 3 days in a row, the same drone had appeared just after noon, each time flying a little lower, circling a little tighter. Some soldiers joked it was bored. Others said it was just trying to spook them. Danny Ortiz didn't laugh. She'd seen this pattern before in a briefing months ago after a mortar attack on an Allied base. Recon drones flew low to mark positions, feeding coordinates back to artillery teams miles away. Most of the time, by the time anyone realized what was happening, the rounds were already airborne. Precision strikes, surgical hits. Nothing random about them, but protocol was clear. No engagement unless confirmed hostile. No one wanted to start an international incident over a camera in the sky. Danny watched the drone every day, tracking its pattern. It flew in arcs, circling the motor pool, then veering east toward the storage yard. On the second day, it buzzed, low enough to shake dust off the rooftops. She filed a report, nothing dramatic, just observational. No one responded. Probably tossed with the rest of the day's data. Too much noise, not enough certainty. She tried again. This time she marked the drone's estimated altitude, direction, and timing. Again, no response. She wasn't a drone analyst. She wasn't in intel. She was logistics. A sharpshooting quartermaster, at best. And no one liked being told what to worry about by someone outside the chain. Still, something gnawed at her dot. She started sketching diagrams at night. The drone's orbit, its timing. She marked the exact second it passed over the comms tower. Every lap it made, it lingered just a little longer. like it was calculating. On the third day, she stayed up late with an old infrared scope, watching from the tower where she'd eventually take the shot. At 0:47 hours, she spotted faint flashes on the northern ridge-like reflections. Binoculars? Rangefinders? She couldn't confirm. But they weren't stars. Stars didn't move like that dot by morning. She hadn't slept. Her eyes were dry. Her rifle was clean dot at 11:56 a.m. The drone came again. She heard it before she saw it high-pitched, like a mosquito in a speaker system. Her squad mates were half asleep in the shade, sipping warm electrolyte drinks and swatting flies. The base was quiet, just another hot, nothing day. But not for Dani. She climbed the tower with practiced ease. She didn't ask for clearance. She didn't wait for backup. She just set the Barrett on the sandbags and unfolded her notes. Time, speed, altitude. Every lap was tighter than the one before. The drone was closing in. Below, soldiers barely looked up. They'd seen this dance before. No harm had come yet. Why panic now? Dani lined up her shot. She didn't intend to fire. Not yet. She just wanted to confirm what she already suspected. The drone was flying too low, much too low. She adjusted her scope, switching between infrared and optical. The payload section wasn't visible. It wasn't a weaponized drone. At least not. Obviously. But there was something slung underneath, something metallic, boxy, shaped like a transmitter or laser designator. She keyed her radio. Sergeant Ortiz requesting priority eyes on possible recon threat. Coordinates 15 Alpha 6. Drone flying repeated patterns. Static answered. Then a half-interested voice. Copy that, Ortiz. Drone activity acknowledged. No immediate action. Return to post. That was it. No escalation. No concern. No action. Dani didn't move. She breathed in the dust, the heat, the tension. Her eye stayed glued to the scope. The drone passed overhead again slower. This time, lower. She could see the seams in the metal. Then, for the first time, it tilted its nose directly toward her. Not a full pivot, just a twitch like it had noticed. Her noticing it, she froze. Then it returned to its arc. Down below, Janssen walked by and spotted her on the tower again. She's back at it, he muttered to Bell. Drone hunter Dani. Bell laughed. Maybe she thinks it's personal now. Janssen cupped his hands and yelled up, You planning to wave that thing down with your rifle, Sergeant? Dani didn't flinch. They couldn't see what she saw. She wasn't imagining the shift in speed. She wasn't making up the slight glimmer on the horizon that looked too much like a targeting lens. She wasn't being paranoid. She was being prepared. She ran the numbers one more time. Altitude, distance, speed. If it passed again, at that. Height, and she timed it right. No. She hesitated. She had no orders. But orders had limits. And instincts didn't. The drone passed again. Lower. She breathed. Counted. Sighted. The wind was steady. The rifle was steady. Her heart was steady. She exhaled. Her finger touched the trigger. Dani's finger rested on the trigger like it belonged there. The weight of the rifle pressed firm against her shoulder, her cheeks snug against the stock. The drone was closing in again, drifting overhead in a slow, methodical arc. She could feel the air pressure shift as it passed, low enough now to be hit with the right shot, but only if she calculated everything right. There would be no second chance. She didn't hear the noise below anymore. The snickering, the comments, the idle footsteps across gravel, all of it faded into static. The scope narrowed her vision. The world became glass, crosshairs, and that one circling eye in the sky. A breath in. Steady. Breath. Out. Fire. The Barrett exploded against her shoulder with its signature crack, a sound that split the base in half. It was like thunder in a tin can, a sound no one could ignore. Soldiers nearby jolted. Heads snapped up. Dirt kicked up from the muzzle's shockwave, rolled down the sandbag wall like mist dot in the scope. Danny saw it happen. A flick, not an explosion. Not a spiral of fire, but a distinct jolt in midair. The drone staggered. Its nose dipped just slightly, and then it jerked sideways, as if caught by an invisible hand. Then it leveled and kept flying. Her finger still rested on the trigger, as the shell casing ejected and clinked off the sandbag below. Smoke drifted from the barrel. She didn't move. She stared into the scope. The drone continued its route, but something was off now. Its arc had shifted. It was pulling away. She slowly lifted her head. Silence followed. For just a moment, the base went completely still. Then the laughter began. Jansen was the first. "You missed?" He called up from the ground, laughing as if it were the funniest thing he'd seen all deployment. "You actually fired at it?" Bell doubled over, howling. "Oh, man. Ortiz is going full cowboy now." Another soldier clapped sarcastically. 10 points for effort." She said nothing. She started clearing the rifle, sliding the bolt, checking the chamber. Her hands moved with ritual calm. Behind her back, the jokes kept coming. "Trying out for Top Gun, Ortiz? Thought you were a supply clerk, not a sniper goddess. Did you hit the moon instead?" Donnie kept packing up her rifle. She looked over her shoulder once, not at the soldiers, but at the sky. The drone was smaller now, pulling away, drifting back toward the hills. It wasn't climbing fast. If anything, it seemed ... erratic. It wobbled slightly, the same way a damaged rotor might before stabilizing. But nothing was certain, and certainty, she knew, was the only thing the military cared about. She gathered her notebook, her spent casing, and slung the Barrett over her back. As she climbed down from the tower, Bell met her at the bottom, with an exaggerated look of concern. "You okay, Sergeant?" he asked, half laughing. "That drone break your heart?" Donnie stared at him, her expression unreadable. "I hit it," she said simply. That stopped him for half a second. "Sure you did." "I saw it flinch," she added. Jansen came up beside him, eyebrows raised. "You saw it flinch?" "It dipped when I fired. It corrected its path. I hit it." "Danny," Bell said, using her first name like they were close. "You fired a sniper round at an aircraft moving over 50 miles an hour at 400 feet. That's not a shot. That's a prayer." She looked at him flatly. "I don't pray," Jansen chuckled. "Well, then maybe God heard your math." The laughter returned. Not cruel, exactly. Just condescending. The way people laugh when something feels too unbelievable to be true, and too unimportant to investigate. She walked past them without another word. The bass returned to its rhythm. Someone turned up a radio. Someone else shouted for a wrench from the maintenance bay. A water tank hissed from pressure. Everything went back to normal. But Danny felt anything but normal. She returned to her post, cleaned the rifle again, and placed the spent casing on her shelf. She didn't write a report this time. She didn't radio command. She'd already tried that route. They didn't listen. Instead, she opened her journal and sketched what she saw. The drone's altered flight path, the dip, the recovery, and the wobble before retreat. She wrote one sentence beneath it. Hit confirmed by behavior, not impact. Later, as the sun dipped low and the air turned heavy with the smell of diesel and sweat, a low-ranking radar tech walked across the base with a puzzled look on his face. He entered the operations tent, holding a printed radar strip in his hand. He showed it to a junior officer. "Sir, we lost that drone," the tech said. The officer raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, lost?" "It dropped off radar 10 minutes. After the gunshot. Sharp descent. No recovery. Where's the alert? There wasn't one. But I marked the coordinates. Looked like a crash pattern. The officer looked at the map. It was outside their engagement zone. Unconfirmed. No visuals. He nodded. Thanks. Keep an eye out. No one called Donnie. No one made an announcement. Radar didn't lie. And the bullet she fired, the one they all laughed at, had gone somewhere. In the command tent, the air was cold, not from the desert heat outside, but from the humming air conditioner that worked overtime to keep the equipment from overheating. Inside, machines blinked and murmured. A wall of monitors tracked communications, vehicle movements, and the steady sweep of local radar. Private First Class Noel Patterson, the junior radar tech on duty, sipped his third cup of instant coffee and yawned as he checked the screen for anomalies. It had been a dull shift. No red flags. No pings. Just that same drone, doing its usual lunchtime loop. He'd marked it earlier, tagged it Echo 14 non-hostile. It had shown up the last 3 days, same path, same altitude. Boring. But now ... something was off. He stared at the trace. The small green dot that represented Echo 14 wasn't circling anymore. It was diving. Hard. Too hard for a normal descent. He squinted and zoomed in. A drone had suddenly lost altitude and speed. From steady to unstable in seconds. Then the signature vanished altogether. Gone. No fade, no steady drift. Just a sudden vertical drop and silence. What the hell? He muttered, adjusting the screen. He flagged the log, printed the timestamp, and scanned the radio logs from the tower. That's when he noticed a report, not from command, but from someone else. 11:59 a.m. Single round discharged sniper rifle. No official engagement authorization. Name on the form. Sergeant Danny Ortiz. His eyebrows went up. He ran the clock. Back. Ortiz's shot was recorded at exactly 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 7 seconds. The radar showed the drone entering descent at 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 11 seconds. 4 seconds. A bullet could cover the distance in under 2. He stared at the paper in his hand, the screen still blinking blank where Echo 14 had once flown. Then he stood and took the report to his supervising officer. Lieutenant Harris looked over the data, without saying a word for nearly a full minute. Then he asked the same question Patterson had been whispering to himself. She took it down? Maybe, Patterson said. The drop was sudden. No recovery. It vanished. Could have malfunctioned. Could have. But ... the timing's exact. Harris ran a hand through his hair and sighed. We'll pass it up, but quietly. No need to stir anything. Still, the report made its way up the chain. Not with fanfare, not with flashing lights, just with a quiet nudge, a forwarded email. A message logged as curious, but in the right hands, it raised eyebrows. The drone's manufacturer was contacted. No mechanical faults had been reported in the unit. In fact, it had recently undergone diagnostics. The team at Central Recon reviewed the black box data and confirmed the final seconds. Matched a pattern consistent with mid-air impact. The damage signature was small, but precise. Something had punctured the airframe, just enough to compromise. Its stabilizers. The drone didn't explode. It simply fell, clipped by something fast and powerful. A .50 caliber round. Back at the outpost, no one told Danny. She sat alone at her desk in the logistics tent, running inventory checks on radio equipment. It hadn't worked properly since last winter. The same soldiers who'd laughed earlier still cracked jokes behind her back, though not quite as loudly now. A few gave her longer glances. Bell had stopped making eye contact altogether. Janssen still tried, though. He strolled by her tent later, that afternoon with 2 bottles of warm cola, and knocked on the frame. Hey, sharpshooter, he said with a smirk. I figured you might want a drink after that wild shot of yours. Donnie looked up from her clipboard. I'm good, she said. He lingered. You really believe you hit it? She paused. Looked at him. I don't believe. I know. Janssen chuckled but didn't argue. He handed her the soda anyway, then left without a word. She set it aside without opening it. Later that evening, during briefing, the company commander cleared his throat before starting the usual status update. We've received confirmation, he said, that the unidentified drone has not returned to operational airspace. We believe it experienced technical failure during its last pass. A few soldiers exchanged glances. One or two looked at Danny. The commander didn't mention her. He didn't have to. Donnie said nothing. She kept her eyes forward, hands folded in her lap. After the meeting, a tall figure approached her from the side hallway. Captain Reese, a battle-hardened officer with 20 years under his belt, and poker face that gave nothing away. Ortiz, he said. Sir, you still have that rifle? Yes, sir. I want you on Overwatch rotation starting tomorrow. Tower Bravo, you'll be logging visual patterns on all aerial units. I'll send specs. Yes, sir. Good shot, he added, almost under his breath. Even if no one wants to say it yet. She nodded. Thank you, sir. As he walked away, she allowed herself the smallest of smiles. It wasn't vindication. Not yet, but it was something. In the war, you didn't always get parades or headlines. Sometimes the radar just stopped blinking. And sometimes someone noticed that you made it happen. And deep down, Donnie didn't need applause. She just needed the truth. And the truth was in the numbers. The bullet had listened. The jokes didn't stop immediately. They just faded, like a fire running out of fuel. The laughter dulled into awkward glances and half-finished wisecracks. Soldiers who had teased Donnie the day before now gave her a little more space, a little more silence. In a place where confidence was loud and respect was rare, something unspoken had changed that no one had officially said. She brought the drone down. The command briefing blamed technical failure, but everybody knew how the military talked when it didn't want to admit something. And everybody knew the drone stopped flying after Donnie's bullet cut the sky. The next morning, as the base stirred and heat rippled over the dirt-packed ground, Danny returned to Tower Bravo, not because anyone ordered her to. She had the clearance now, but because it was where she belonged. It was the highest point on the base, and the only place where she could see clearly, uninterrupted, with her rifle balanced and her world quiet. When she climbed the ladder, no one laughed. Bell glanced up from where he was refueling a generator. He caught her eye, paused, then looked away. His smirk was gone. The others around him didn't say a word. From the tower, Donnie swept the horizon with her scope, just as she had the day before. There were no drones today, no movement in the sky at all. But her trigger finger stayed near the guard. Just in case. By late afternoon, a shadow appeared beside the tower. Specialist Jenna Hayes, from Recon. She rarely spoke to anyone unless of it involved coordinates or targets. She climbed the ladder halfway, called up without pretense. You Ortiz? Yeah, Danny answered, still looking through her scope. Hayes offered a slight nod. Heard what you did. Not officially, but you know how it is? Quiet whispers get around. Donnie looked down at her. I just took the shot. Yeah. Well, some of us never would have dared. Hayes tossed a small black case up to her. A brand new lens attachment. Military issue. IR enhancer. For drone silhouettes at high noon. Thought you might use it better than the armory guys who just sit on it. Danny caught it with one hand. Thanks. Hayes climbed back down without another word. By evening, the whispers had grown. In the mess hall, soldiers no longer talked over Danny. A few nodded when she walked by. One even stood and let her cut. In line, not because of orders, but because something about her presence now carried weight. Unspoken, but real dot in the barracks, Belle sat across from Janssen, staring at a set of cards, but not really playing. She really hit it, Belle said finally, softly. Didn't she? Janssen shrugged. You saw the radar report. Yeah, but I didn't want to believe it. Not with that shot. Janssen leaned back on the cot. We were laughing at her while she was doing the math. That's what gets me. She wasn't showing off. She was calculating. Belle rubbed his face. You think she's mad at us? She's not the type. You sure? No, but I'm not going to poke the bear and find out. Meanwhile, Donnie sat in the corner of her bunk, cleaning the Barrett again. Her hands moved with ritualistic grace, oiling every groove, checking the balance, inspecting the scope. She didn't need to clean it again, but it wasn't about need. It was about readiness. Every shot told a story, even the ones that ended in silence. Later that night, Sergeant McBride from command stopped by her tent with a sealed folder. Ortiz? He said, standing at attention more out of habit than necessity. She looked up. Commander wants you to fill out a secondary observation log. Forward it straight to intelligence, not through usual channels. It's a quiet protocol. She nodded and took the folder. McBride hesitated before leaving. You know, I had you figured wrong. Thought you were just another quiet rifle freak. I am, she said, without sarcasm. He gave a faint smile. Yeah, well, keep being that. After he left, she opened the folder. Inside were new aerial patterns, trajectory analyses, and a map marked with recent drone crash coordinates. No mention of her name, no commendation. Just data. That was enough. Danny didn't need medals. She didn't even care if they admitted the truth publicly. The shot was clean. The timing was exact. And she had earned something more powerful than praise. Silence. The kind that came with recognition, respect, and the understanding that she was no longer a joke. She stepped outside her tent, the air cooler now, desert winds sweeping low across the compound. The stars above looked like bullet holes in the fabric of night. Someone was playing a guitar off near the fire barrels. The melody was soft, old, maybe something from back home. A few soldiers laughed nearby, but not at her, not anymore. She sat on a crate, the rifle resting beside her, and looked out over the darkened hills. She didn't need to speak. Her silence said enough. Out here, the loudest thing wasn't the crack of a rifle. It was what followed. The pause, the shift in the way people looked at you, the recognition in their eyes when they realized they had misjudged you completely. Danny. Ortiz didn't need to say, I told you so. The drone had gone down. The radar confirmed it. And now, the base finally understood. You don't laugh at a woman who knows how to make a bullet listen. The summons came at dawn. A young corporal from communications stood outside Danny's tent, shifting awkwardly on his boots, holding a sealed envelope like it might explode. Sergeant Ortiz, he said, avoiding her eyes. You're requested. At command. Captain Reese's office. Priority. He handed her the envelope and left before she could ask anything. Inside, the message was typed clean and cold. Subject, observation report. Debrief time, 0730 hours location. Forward command office. Sector C security level. Eyes only, no explanation. No warning. Danny folded the paper once and tucked it into her uniform. She didn't ask anyone for input. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She simply pulled on her boots, checked the lock on her weapons locker, and walked alone. Forward command building looked like every other half-temporary structure on the base. Prefab walls, sandbags around the foundation, a C unit wheezing like it had asthma. But what happened inside wasn't routine. She was buzzed through 2 checkpoints and escorted down a narrow hallway by an officer she didn't recognize. Clean uniform, quiet boots, clipboard in hand. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. When they reached Captain Reese's office, the door was already open. Inside, Reese stood behind his desk, arms crossed, brows drawn low. He wasn't smiling. But his nod was not unkind. "Sergeant," he said, "take a seat." Donnie sat. The room was quiet. A single folder lay open on the desk. She could see a still frame inside it, a zoomed-in image of a drone's shattered undercarriage, fragments of carbon fiber skin peeled away around a small, circular puncture. Exactly .50 caliber wide. Captain Reese tapped it once. "That's from the drone." "You hit," he said. "Recovered yesterday by Allied units." Donnie said nothing. He continued. "Central Recon confirmed mid-flight damage consistent with a high-velocity ballistic strike. They estimate it compromised the internal gyro. Flight logs show rapid destabilization. 4 seconds after your shot. It dropped 20 feet in less than 2 seconds. Couldn't recover. Crashed into a dry ravine outside Sector 9. Still, she said nothing. There was no need. Reese leaned forward. "You want to know what makes this tricky, Sergeant?" Donnie met his eyes. "This wasn't supposed to be possible," he said. "Standard protocol assumes ground fire can't touch a drone at that range. Unless it's missile-equipped. You proved otherwise. That's both impressive and inconvenient." "Inconvenient, sir?" she asked, her voice level. He nodded. "If word gets out that a logistics sergeant dropped a recon drone with 1 shot and no authorization, it opens questions. Why wasn't air support present? Why was our radar late? Why are we trusting machines over instinct?" Donnie understood. No, he wasn't reprimanding her. He was managing fallout. Reese flipped the file closed and slid it across the desk toward her. "Inside is a commendation. Not for drone interdiction. Officially, that's still classified. It's for exceptional situational awareness under duress. You'll receive it quietly. No ceremony. No announcement." She nodded. "She didn't care about the wording. I've also been given permission to reassign you," he said, "if you're willing." Donnie tilted her head slightly. "Reassign me to what?" Reese opened a drawer and pulled out a black binder marked Classified. "Tactical Marksman Training Module. We need people who can do what you just did and teach others to think like you think. Read patterns. Work without perfect intelligence. Calculate risks. This isn't a standard sharpshooter job. It's adaptive response. Human instinct layered over tech failure. And you're exactly what this war forgot it needed." Danny looked at the binder. It wasn't a promotion. It was a pivot. A door opening into a new kind of war. One where people like her were finally taken seriously. "Will I still be based forward?" she asked. "For now," Reese said. "But you'll be rotating to satellite outposts, advising, training, handpicking candidates." "I accept," she said without pause. "Good." He stood. She did 2 as she reached for the file. He stopped her. "One more thing," he said. "You ever wonder why no one apologized?" She thought for a moment, then answered. "They didn't need to. I wasn't right for their sake. I was right for mine." Reese cracked the faintest smile. "That's why I trust you." He offered his hand. She shook it as she stepped outside. The desert light hit her eyes like a flashbang. The heat was already rising, but it felt easier to breathe. She walked back through camp with the binder tucked beneath her arm. Bell spotted her from the motor pool. He opened his mouth, maybe to offer a sarcastic comment, maybe to say something else entirely, but then closed it again. He looked away, sheepish. Respectful, even Danny didn't slow at her tent. She opened the folder again and looked at the commendation. It was generic, as expected, impersonal, vague, safe. But her name was on it, and the signature below it came from someone 2 ranks higher than she'd ever spoken to. Then she opened the binder. Inside were mission profiles, sniper cadet records, and field analysis templates, but taped to the inside cover was a handwritten note. Train them to think like you, not shoot like you. What you did can't be replicated, but the mindset can. It wasn't praise, it was acknowledgement, and that was enough. Donnie laid the folder aside, picked up her rifle, and began disassembling it again, piece by piece, polishing each part with the care of someone who understood what a single bullet could change. She hadn't just hit a drone. She'd reset expectations, and the war would never look quite the same again. The war didn't stop. Drones kept flying. Convoys kept moving. Bases kept shifting across the dust and flame of a region that never truly quieted. But something had changed. Not in the headlines, not in the official reports. It was deeper. A change in how soldiers looked at the sky, and at each other, and at her. Donnie Ortiz didn't wear medals on her chest. The commendation she received sat folded in a box in the corner of her locker, unopened since the day she earned it. Her rifle, on the other hand, remained spotless, precise, ready, not because she wanted to fight again, but because the rifle had never been about war. It had always been about control, discipline. Focused out after her reassignment, Danny traveled across outposts, instructing marksmen, observing scout units, embedding with logistics teams who never imagined they'd need. Trigger-ready advisor. She taught with few words and sharp eyes, correcting postures, measuring distances by instinct, showing them how to see before they aimed. She never mentioned the drone. She didn't have to. The story told itself, in whispers behind tents. Over. Coffee at watch stations, at gun cleaning benches late at night. No one knew the full truth. Some said she shot down a spy drone with a bullet meant for tanks. Others claimed it was luck or a technical fluke. A few insisted she hadn't even fired. That radar scrambled and misread the situation. But all agreed on one thing. She was the one who had taken the shot, and the drone had gone down. One evening, months later, while stationed at a temporary training camp outside Kandahar, Danny stood outside the barracks, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The light bled into the horizon like fire through a lens. Behind her, young recruits argued over firing angles and wind speeds. One of them, a nervous private from Alabama, paused beside her. "Sergeant Ortiz?" he asked, his voice cautious. "Yeah." "Is it true? About the drone?" She didn't answer right away. She stared ahead, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make him question the question. Finally, she said, "You don't aim for legends. You aim for outcomes." The private nodded slowly, not sure what that meant, not fully, but grateful she had answered at all. She turned back toward the camp. "You miss when you make the shot about yourself," she added. "Shoot for what needs to happen, not for who's watching." He never forgot those words. Neither did the other recruits who heard them. Years later, after Danny returned home to New Mexico, the legend followed her. She didn't talk about it with reporters. She declined interviews. She didn't write a book, or speak at conferences, or chase medals. She worked part-time at a veterans center, taught long-range shooting at a local range, and sometimes helped on wildland fire lookout rotations during the summer. But the story found its way back to her, through letters from soldiers she'd trained, through emails from officers who had heard her name in war zones halfway across the globe, through quiet salutes from strangers who didn't say why they respected her, but clearly did Dot in her hometown. Kids would point her out at the diner. "That's her," they'd whisper. "The one who shot the drone." She'd pretend not to hear. One afternoon at the range, a teenage girl approached her after practice. She held her rifle with careful hands, hands that had potential but lacked confidence. "My brother said you did something big in the war," the girl said. "But he said you never talk about it." Donnie took the rifle from her, checked the sights, adjusted the rear scope slightly, and handed it back. "If you're good," she said, "people will talk for you." The girl smiled and nodded. Danny turned away, but not before offering one last piece of advice. "Keep your fingers steady. Don't flinch before the trigger breaks. The bullet already knows where to go. You just have to let it." That day, the girl hit her first bullseye. She never forgot who stood beside her. And so, Danny's story lived on. Not in documentaries or military archives, but in campfire tales and range-side lessons. In every soldier who whispered about the woman who made a shot that command wouldn't confirm. In every recruit who learned to trust their instincts when the equipment failed. In every moment when silence demanded courage and calm, won over chaos. At night, in the quiet of her small house on the edge of the desert, Donnie sometimes sat on the back porch with her coffee, staring at the sky. The stars above shimmered like distant targets, each one a reminder of everything that couldn't be controlled, only accepted. She never needed the world to know. The sky had listened. The bullet had found its mark. And in the spaces where silence replaced noise, a legend had been born, not because it was loud, but because it was true.